Well, good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. Today, I am joined by a political advocate, one that I wish there were more of. We need more people stepping out, showing their strength, being leaders like this. Well, I can call you a young lady because I'm slightly older than you are. I'm 54, so you can be a young lady. Tracy Henderson. She is in charge of, are you the CEO, or what would be the right thing for California Parents Union?
So, good morning. I'm the president and founder of California Parents Union, and we're actually close to the same age. I'm 53.
Oh, you're 53. Okay. I just turned 54, so. But you can still be
Happy
the young one.
birthday.
Well, I think what you're doing is really important. What kind of drove you to found this? I mean, let's face it, we have it pretty good here in the US, and a lot of people just sit on the sidelines and they go, well, there's these problems, but I can ignore them and because my life is good. I don't really have to tackle them on. Nobody wants to take leadership. And since COVID, I gotta hand it to the women. They have stepped up in a way that is impressive. So what drew you to step in and found something like this?
Well, back when the scamdemic started, I live over in the Carmel area on the coast, and there was a district attorney was going after a local restaurant, kind of iconic and famous, called the Tuck Box. If you come to Carmel, it's one of those little Carmel houses, and the DA was really offensive to me as a lawyer. I swore an oath to the Constitution, and so here is this district attorney going after, um, a restaurant, and he was standing up, and he basically stood up and said, "I have a constitutional right to earn money," and so she filed suit against him. And as a lawyer, I had clients in the Monterey County system, so I couldn't represent her because there's an issue of corruption here. The old boys network, et cetera, whatever you want to call it. So I just threw up a GoFundMe and started raising money, and I raised like 35 grand in 1 week. And trust me, I was nobody back then. And I paid for their lawyer for Tuckbox and helped him. But that was the beginning of the experience of the tyranny here locally. And then my husband, who's a principal, he was principal of the local Catholic school, the Carmel Mission, very famous. Junipero Serra's been there for 75 years. Leon Panetta went to that school. And they made a fear-based decision to close the Catholic school after 75 years, if you can believe it. And so my husband, being, white male, looked for a job around the state for about 6 months. And he came home one day and he says, "Honey, I'm moving to Utah to be a ski instructor." Said, okay.
That's quite a big
And
shift.
he did. Yeah, he did. So, men can't not work. They can't be productive. And he always wanted to do it. So he moved. About 4 months later, my daughter and I moved. And everybody's got to remember their moment they were activated. So I had been fighting. I never wore a mask. I mean, I was dragged through a casino, handcuffed to a bench, screamed at, kicked off a ski resort, kicked off a Crate and Barrel, kicked off United Airlines. They've deemed me a direct threat. So first week of school in Utah, freshman year for my daughter, and she forgot her lunch. So I go to the school and I walk through it, and it was under construction. And I looked in the classrooms and the kids were all in masks, and they were like 3 feet apart. It was like a horror flick for me because remember, in California, most of it was online. So you had your kids sitting on Zoom. They weren't necessarily masked. My family didn't mask at all.
Good for you, because my family was a mixed bag. I did to go into certain grocery stores until I finally found one that would allow me to buy food
without a mask. Yeah.
Without a mask.
So I'm walking through the school and I'm horrified, and I'm walking out of the school and a couple of juniors come up to me. They're like, "You're not wearing a mask." I said, "You're not the police. You're not my doctor. I got this." And something in me just snapped. And I literally went up and down that state superintendent, the health officer, the governor's office, education. And they finally sat me down with Utah Parents United. They made me their legal director on a volunteer basis. And within 2 months, we, the parents, got a law passed banning masks in schools. And I was hooked. I was addicted. And basically, my daughter wanted to come home. So I came home, started California Parents United. And after a year of advocating with groups across the state, it became very clear that the rallies and the T-shirts aren't doing anything. It's money and it's numbers. So we formed California Parents Union, and now our objective is to get to over 500,000 members to be bigger than the teachers unions and to have a real seat at the table in the legislature. Because again, it's money in numbers. You've seen all of the parents go to these hearings, right? Have great speakers. They all call in and say, I oppose, I oppose, I oppose. And the evil state legislature just turns around and votes against parents' rights. So what's the real effective solution? We need to be bigger than everybody, the biggest special interest group, parent lobby group, and have a real seat at the table.
Well, the California Teachers Union is perceived as the most powerful union in California. I don't know whether they really are. Don't they spend something like 60% of their money on leftist politics?
They're perceived number one most powerful in the United States, but they're actually 37th in services and they don't do anything for their teachers. They should be called the education mafia. It is a complete facade. And my case in point for you is Clovis Unified. You're familiar with Clovis, right?
I've been
Sacramento
to
Senate.
over 20 meetings, and I know all the
Yeah,
board members.
Stacy Shiro, president of the board, they have never had a teachers union for 30 years. And for 30 years, they've negotiated for themselves. All the teachers unions really are is a collective bargaining representative, a human being that sits down at the table and does negotiations with their district, with the employers. So for 30 years, Stacy is the head of the faculty senate, the maintenance head, the nurses head, the classified employees head all sit down and they negotiate, and they've never needed a teachers union. And the rest of the world has been told as a young educator, you need lawyers and you need insurance. Well, if you really think you need that to waste $1,200 a year for the National Teachers Union, then you can get insurance for lawyers and insurance in case you're sued for a fifth of the price by an organization called AAE Teachers. It's a facade. And here's the thing. I was just talking to a lawyer out of Chico before we got on the show. Here's the thing. If you leave the union, you send your letter in and you tell them to stop taking those dues out of your check, you save $1,200 a year. And unless 50% plus one of the local teachers leave the union, you're still represented. You need to stand up and protest right now and leave the union, and you'll still be fine. They're a facade. They don't do anything for their teachers.
I personally know numerous teachers that have left the union. Obviously, I understand your organization is nonpartisan, but I'm very much partisan. You know, I have my donkey pox shirt on today. That kind of gives you a sense of my perspective. But I understand why you're nonpartisan. What kind of tools and resources do you offer for joining this union? And what does it cost?
Okay, so it's $25 a year, and someday we'll have to raise that price. But we offer resources. Consider us like a generalist solution. You have to meet people where they are. So for parents who can't pull their kids out of school, we offer how to speak to your school board meeting. We offer legal resources. So there's a Healthy Kids survey going around that asks about pronouns and gender. If you don't want to take that survey, there's education codes that says you don't have to. And so in our membership lounge, one example under legal resources is an opt-out form. I opt out of, there's 10 different things you can opt out of having to do with programs or curriculum, that kind of thing. If you are of the mind that you're done with this evil public school system, which a lot of people are, there's homeschooling resources. Parisa Fishback.
I'll let you finish. Go ahead. I do have a question, but let me finish.
Parisa Fishback is the head of Moms on the Ground, one of them. And she and one of my board members, Renee Rogers, wrote a step-by-step guide on how to leave and homeschool. And it's a PDF you can download once you become a member. And then Emily Jones from Home Tribe, she does homeschooling 101 classes. And she's out of Santa Cruz, but her website brings people together. So if you want a co-op or you want to find a charter school, she brings people together and that kind of. So those are just two examples for teachers. And then I'll shut up. But for teachers, we've got how not to wear a mask, how to stand up against that, legal letters. We've got how to leave the union. We've got the insurance that you think you need. And, again, all for $25 a year, CaliforniaTeachersUnited.com. And those are just a few of the resources we have.
So you don't need to be a parent necessarily even. Couldn't anybody join this, or are there limitations on who can join?
No. If you care about children, you're welcome to join as a concerned citizen. One of the greatest things about being a member of California Parents Union is if you, like you were talking about those people earlier that just don't have time. They'd rather just go to the beach and not really fight and go on their vacations, which I envy them. And hope they keep doing it, but they could join as a member and help us increase our numbers. But for those who want resources for their money, we've got things in there. Like there's a library in there, and you get some discounts on the books if you're a member, that kind of thing. Truthful Therapist. She's a therapist. She's a 20-year social worker, and she's got how to talk to your kids about CRT, how to talk to your kids about the transgender issues, how to find a good therapist, because most of the profession of therapy is now pushing this gender affirmation stuff, which is actually bad for kids because gender questioning is a mental condition. They need support, not affirmation. So, I mean, there's just so much in there.
Okay, so essentially, your resources could be used to change local because we're not going to change this unless we change first who we are. Even if you're not willing to be the point of the spear, if you were to join this, you can help somebody that's willing to be the point of the spear. And we have to change local and begin to change the culture because those are our future leaders.
Yeah, Eric, one of our focuses in 2024 is school board races. So, California Parents Union, the legislature, as you know, has delegated broad authority to school districts, and it's codified in the Education Code 35160. And as long as it has to do with education, not health, education, they have broad authority to do what they think is best for their communities. But in order to protect kids and parents and teachers and school boards, you have to get conservative parents' rights advocates on the board. Okay, so we fund, we train, we endorse. So starting with the easy one, endorsement. You reach out to our organization on our website under the Act Now page, and you say, hey, I want to apply for endorsement, and we send you a series of questions. Once you answer the questions, our board of directors votes on whether or not to endorse you. Then we give you an endorsement letter you can put on your website so that everybody knows that you're a parents' rights choice person. And we make you sign a pledge to always choose to protect a parent's right to choose. I mean, think of it from a political standpoint. It's the easiest political position to take because all you do is put the decision on the parent if it's controversial, right? So we endorse, and then we help spread you around your community so people build awareness of you as a parents' rights advocate and to vote for you. We train. So we've partnered with Leadership Institute, which is out of Florida. Bridget Ziegler is the vice president of Leadership Institute School Board out of Florida, and she's a former Moms for Liberty founder. And her and Nathan across the state, we're working to put events on all over the state. And there's one coming up in Tulare and one coming up in Fresno, I think, which are your areas.
They're both close. So do you have the dates for those?
I can look it up and I can text you, Eric, to help promote. But we went to an event. It's been a little while for that, so I'd have to look here for a second. But so their trainings are, volunteer army builder, how to run for school board, how to be a good office holder, all those kinds of things. And then we fund. We have a PAC. It's called Concerned Parents of California, cpacpac.org. And once we fill those coffers, we're going to focus on school board races. So if, for example, in your area, you've got some wealthy folks who want to help with the local school board races, then you just come to us, and it can't be the candidates. It has to be non-candidates have to reach out to us because PACs, we can't talk to candidates. And we work together to promote that particular candidate using your community's funds. So even though we have a board, a really high-level influencer board of directors, if a group wants to focus on their local, we will commit to doing that. And none of us are paid. We're all volunteer. It's just we're kind of the conduit to help support, right?
Very cool.
So we endorse, we fund, we train.
Okay, so a lot of people don't realize this, particularly in small districts. So, districts that have 5 trustees rather than 7, automatically, because those are smaller ones. A lot of people here in the Central Valley, I don't know about in your area, cost of living is much higher there, but they often run unopposed. number one, whether they're
Good.
good or bad. And for a couple $1,000s, that's their entire campaign budget. A
Yeah.
lot of them don't even
Yeah.
don't even meet the reporting threshold because they're below it. We could really
Yep.
make a difference if we targeted this.
Exactly. And that's why, I mean, we're trying to set ourselves up for success, not failure. You know, the assembly and the Senate races are just too expensive. And the sad thing is a lot of our money is being sent out of California. A
Mhm.
lot of high powered fundraising machines, which will remain unnamed, are not supporting their own candidates. So we're focusing on, think of it like a battle. If we can take back the school boards, we can hold the line against Newsom, if you will. And you're right. It's like one of my local school boards, I think he spent $650 in one. So
Yeah, that's just
it's
insane.
really kind of quite inexpensive. So that event, before I forget, that event is Tulare Masonic Lodge, November 18, 2023. And it's about the powerful skills on how to make a long-term difference in your community. So local organizing and army building.
Okay, and we can find that on your website?
Yeah, I'll text it to you too,
Okay,
Eric, so you can share. But
absolutely.
November 18th is the date,
Okay.
and that's Tulare.
And you said there's a Fresno one also?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find that one.
Not a problem. Look, a lot of events are
Yeah,
going on. You know, I find sometimes I feel like I'm a chicken with my head cut off because I'm running from event to event to event. I do this for fun. I consider this to be only one aspect of my activism. Um, I lead a group. I'm on several committees. I'm on I'm active going to school board meetings, city council meetings, occasionally board of supervisors meetings. When there's an issue that comes up and I think I can make a difference, I try to go and I stay for the meeting and I speak. So,
yeah.
but again, I'm going to be calling out men. There are opportunities to get involved, and the women are leading the way. Shouldn't population's about 50-50? Shouldn't you be stepping up a little bit more?
Well, I'm really encouraged, Eric. When I remember the scandemic was 2020, we're in 2023. And in the beginning, it was all women. And it was because you started coming after our kids.
Mhm.
That mama bear instinct is real. I'm sure you're aware of this. And there's a papa bear instinct, but men, the men were working. They were doing other things. Now the men are stepping up. And what's even more encouraging to me is our objective in the beginning was to empower parents to stand up for themselves. And if you look around the state of California, that's happened. And it's bittersweet for me. I mean, I like helping people. My favorite part of being a lawyer is my clients. And so I'm sad that they're so empowered and they don't need me anymore. But we've achieved our goal as an organization to help empower them. And there's some really powerful group leads out there,
Mhm.
right? One
Absolutely.
of, PVUSD Vice President Leandra Blades. So we have a school board meeting, statewide school board meeting every 2 months. And our next one is September 20th. And so school board members across the state come together. I facilitate the conversation to get them to share best practices. Leandra's going to come present. She's gotten rid of CSBA. She's fired her superintendent. She's fired her lawyer. They've turned over their board. They've looked at their memorandum of understanding with the teachers union and realized they're paying the teachers unions money from the district. They're changing that. They realized that the recruitment organization called Education Services, ESS, is actually an arm of a law firm called AALR, and that's a huge conflict of interest. So they have a new recruitment organization, which they utilize when they got rid of their superintendent, that they're passing around. Huff and Henderson is a better law firm than AALR Lozano Smith because they don't lie to their school boards and give, lacked legal advice that lacks reasoning. So she's on fire. So, she's one of the most amazing humans, and that came from her just running for office and standing up. And she's a mom.
Well, that is awesome,
So,
and I always love hearing
yeah.
stories like that. How do we get to the place where a significant percentage of the population decided that they're not your kids? I mean, that's insane to me. And there's one party that largely stands for that. That's largely why when Governor Youngkin in Virginia was running, he won because his opponent, former Clinton administration person, I think Rob Emanuel, but former Clinton administration person was running against him. And in their debate, the Democrat said, "Those aren't your kids." Well, folks, in California, they don't consider them your kids. The teachers union doesn't consider them your kids. We need something like this organization to stand against that.
I honestly don't understand that kind of behavior. I don't know if you remember, there was a school out of Virginia that were passing out sex toys to the kids, and the
Yeah.
parents let it happen. And my husband, who's a 22-year Harvard educated Marine, he's a principal teacher. He now works for another company. He said to me, that's virtue signaling. They want to seem nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, that's insanity. But they want to seem nice. So they call themselves LGBTQ allies. When if they really stopped and thought about what pushing gender affirmation, pushing porn, and pushing all of it means to a kid, then they would be horrified. I mean, all I can say is Lee Dundas. She went around the state, actually, she went around the nation, and she was talking about Nazi Germany and Hitler. And there was an experiment. I'm sure you know of this, Eric, where 2/3 of your neighbors will turn you in if we went back to the Nazi Germany days, just because a guy in a white coat who seems to be a doctor told them to. It's insanity. Tucker says 8% of us didn't comply. I was one of that 8%, but think of how small that is. I don't know. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a lawyer, and I don't understand it.
Yes, but with 8%, let's say there's 8% of us, and I believe it's grown since that point. When we look at the American Revolution, they changed the world, and somewhere between 4 and 10%, it depends on which historian you look at, were actively involved in the fight to essentially divorce ourselves from and gain independence from the largest power the world had ever known in
Oh,
England. And so if they could do it then, we're not so unique. We can relive history if we can become the leaders that the world is waiting for. Instead of waiting for leaders, can we become those leaders?
right. Well, not with current leadership and the oppression from current, national leadership. The Chinese on their TikToks, they have, how to do a medical experiment or, lab experiment and science and math. And our TikToks, it's put the G string on and shake a, drag queen's butt in our face. We're in trouble as a country because we're letting this stuff get through our kids. So again, we're focusing on holding the line on school board level, because if we can stop this stuff in our schools, we have a chance. But I don't know what to tell you. Otherwise, it's unbelievable. And the other challenge we face is there's a lot of infighting, right, in the GOP, parents' rights group, and it just takes away from the mission. So I don't know the answer. I fight and fight and fight, and we stay in our lane and we try to make a difference. Um, they're trying to take Trump down. I think he's the answer to our nation because he's a disruptor and he's not for sale.
Right.
And he's not perfect. He's made. I don't like what he did with Operation Warp Speed, but he's better than he's not afraid to go up against the deep state. But they're trying to take him down. So I don't know the answer, Eric. I don't have all the answers.
Well,
I don't know.
I want to point out that if you open up a Bible, there's the 10 Commandments, but there's also a series of stories. You could think of the Bible as a series of stories with a moral message. The heroes of those stories almost always are very flawed people that, even though they were flawed, they still found ways to overcome. And I think we need to remember that the leaders that are going to save us aren't going to be perfect. We have to pick our battles, be strategic, and then I hope that the people on my side find a faith, because that faith will give them a strength and a hope that is desperately needed. That is why Newsom shut down churches, but you could go to the strip club and you can go get all the alcohol you wanted, just not at a bar, but you could go buy it. You could go to a pot dispensary, no problem. But if you were going to go to church, not only couldn't you go to church, but at some point he had the nerve to say you can't actually sing in church. And all that made me want to do is take that. I can't use the words that I want. There's nothing positive I can say about the evil man that is Gavin Newsom. Slick, lying. I don't know whether he's for sale like Joe Biden, but probably. Certainly not caring about our interest in any way.
Well, my understanding of the problem with Newsom is he was bred. He was bred and created by, and I don't remember the organization, but the evil George Soros type world order people, just like, the head of Canada. He was bred, and I think he's a narcissist, and he's evil. There's just no other way to explain it. And he's so diabolical that he's trying to stand up and claim he represents parents' rights when he's so far from it. And people will buy into it. What I say is, do not become obsessed with any one leader. You need to do your own homework and own critical thinking, because nobody's perfect. And if you dive deep enough, you'll find the flaws in Newsom for yourself. But the challenge is there's 42 million people in California, and most of them are blue, and they just blindly check the box for Newsom, and we're in trouble because of it.
Well, I don't actually
So
agree
again,
with
Eric,
that statement.
we've got to go down to the local level and wake people up. You can't blindly check the box for Newsom anymore. You're helping him destroy our state.
That part I agree with, but I don't agree that our state is necessarily blue. I think there are portions of our state that are very blue, but there's a whole lot of people that simply don't vote. Major election, let's call 50% are registered, and 50% of those vote. Those are approximately right numbers, which means 25% of the voting age population bothers to show up on a major election. It's way less on other elections. I think that it's more like a whole bunch of people are apathetic rather than they're necessarily blue. There are almost as many independents as there are Republicans in this state, because the Republicans have done their best to alienate anybody that's actually conservative. No.
Well, yeah. So have you seen? Okay, so there's a lot there. Yes, I agree with you that the recall didn't go through because A, they cheated, and B, people sat on their couch and didn't get up. But apathy is a problem. That's why, when I do my speeches, I do the shock value, because if you really realize what's going on, you no longer just sit by.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, a lot of people seem to still be able to, but as we become more uncomfortable, as things like inflation, which I believe is directly related to policy choices that the Biden administration has made, and choices on regulation that Governor Newsom has made, more and more people that can't necessarily afford to just leave the state, are waking up. I'm seeing more and more connection between conservative values, traditional values, and the Hispanic population. That is one of the keys here. And I hate to make it about race, but they are part of the sleeping giant in this state. A huge part.
Yeah, amen. Amen. If we can wake up the Latino population, they will help us take back California. And they have the values of God, family. They're not down with all this over sexualization of our children. Yeah. And the other scary thing is, have you seen, Eric, what they're doing to the GOP platform? There
was something about that, and I'm drawing a blank. I'm sure I will know it as soon as you tell me.
Well, the woke infiltration is happening on the GOP platform. Well, you wouldn't recognize their platform. And I just got an email because, despite the fact that California Parents Union is nonpartisan, I'm a human being and I'm personally conservative, and I'm a GOP delegate. That's as far as I'll go at all. I will never run for office ever. God bless everybody who does. But there's just too much of the emphasis on the LGBTQ stuff being put into our GOP platform. They've dumbed down the education part of it. Some folks asked me to help rewrite it. They're headed down the woke, and I don't understand why. I mean, if what you're saying is true, Eric, then people want to come back to conservative values.
Yes, they do.
Right? But they're pushing the woke in the GOP. It doesn't make any sense. So people are going to have no place to go. We're going to have to start a new party, We the Parents Party.
Maybe. I hope we don't have to go that route, but what we have to do is we need to take back our central committees, which will then eliminate somebody that is, I consider to be awful. The leader of the California GOP is Jessica Patterson. I don't have anything positive to say. I'm not going to go into a bunch of effort to trash her, but ugh, and no, and what are you thinking?
No. My concern with Jessica is I was there as a delegate when she voted herself back into office. And there was a major campaign candidate that came in, dropped $40,000 and got 400 delegates.
Oh, was that Brian Dolly?
I didn't say that.
I did.
So, and it happened again at the last convention. And so that kind of conduct is reprehensible. And I cannot believe the GOP is standing for it. It's just, I know nothing about the Democrat, but I know what they stand for, and I would never support that, with all the stuff they're doing to the kids and the teachers unions. But GOP that conduct is reprehensible.
Yeah, it is absolutely reprehensible. And things like they didn't like what a candidate was saying at convention, and they cut their mic.
Yep.
Was it now 3 years ago when it was all Zoom? If they didn't like what they were saying, it was even easier. They did not allow any debate, and that's Jessica Patterson. And somehow we re-elected that woman. I shouldn't say we. I'm not a delegate, but I am on my central committee.
Again, it was one example is this person came in with 40 grand and 400 delegates and was in, cahoots. And I didn't look into it personally. I don't have any personal knowledge, but the votes were not properly counted by the count of a lot of people. And that's corruption. And I don't, how are you to get around if they're cheating? I don't know that they're cheating.
As long as there's proxy votes, there is tremendous potential to cheat. Everybody that I think everybody that votes should be just like our regular elections. If they're going to vote at the state Republican convention, they need to be there in person. Yep. One person, one vote. And that's not what Jessica wants. Jessica wants proxy votes because it's a way for her to manipulate the outcome. Whether there's actual cheating or just manipulation, I don't like either. I want one person, one vote, secret vote. And maybe even, wouldn't it set a great example if you had to give ID to vote at the Republican national or state convention?
You do. You have to give ID to get in the room.
But not to vote.
To vote. Yeah, you do. You have to give your ID because I forgot my ID and I had to run back to the hotel.
Okay, then that's
and they won't give you your little machines with the little button without your ID. But yeah, and it's think of it. There's 1,400 representatives of the state out of 42 million. I don't know how many Republicans there are. So that's an honor. So get off. Take the days off work and get over there and do your civic duty or pass that on to somebody else who can get there and vote in person. Take this seriously.
Well, I think our path forward, and you're down to about 5 minutes before you've got another conflict. We're going to have to not only dedicate time and effort, but we have to find a way to change hearts and minds. So why are you hopeful enough to stay in this fight?
Well, God has put this on my heart, and I have to obey. And having done this for 3 years, I don't care about fame. I do this for free. Everything I do tells me that it's about money and numbers in terms of representation of the parent. And we don't have that representation at the state, and we don't have it enough at the local levels. So for all those reasons, it's who I, it's now part of who I am and what I do. I'm going to obey, and I'm going to build this organization, and hopefully in the next few years I can hand it off to other leaders, because my daughter's graduating and I'm 53 and I'm not going to fight forever. So it's just God put it on my heart. And if you drill down to what they're doing to our kids, it's disgusting. And you can't not stand up. Like, one last example for your audience, Eric. Roseville Joint Union High School District. They were one of the first schools to open in California. They were one of the first schools to start pushing on a resolution for mass choice before CDPH changed their guidance. And they're recently one of the organizations. They lost their president of the board, and they started allowing porn in their schools. Some of the parents asked me to come and speak as the token lawyer, and they read a book, an excerpt from a book called The Bluest Eye, and then they asked me to discuss the legalities of that at the school board meeting, which it was a crime. Molestation is a crime. Porn is, dissemination of porn is a crime. And the director of the English department that was allowing this book, The Bluest Eye, in their school tried to justify this excerpt that was read was a man molesting a young girl while she ate ice cream. Talking about how she giggles and how she smells different. It's disgusting. And this woman stood up and tried to compare it to Romeo and Juliet and justify it because there was a suicide scene in Romeo and Juliet. So
that's disgusting.
That right there angers me so much that I will work to empower those parents and help them push back and recall those school board members, get that English director fired, file a complaint against her teacher credential, and push back and get that porn out of schools.
Well,
that's enough motivation for me to help.
Just a few years ago, let's go back 10 years. If you brought porn into schools, you'd be arrested.
Right.
What happened? How did we let this happen? Because we let it happen. I don't have kids, so I get a slight amount of slack, but not near enough because I was still asleep. COVID was my great awakening. I paid attention to talk shows and I listened to national. I paid no attention to local. And about March 20th was the first time. I don't remember. It might have been, I'd have to look on a calendar. But within a few days, I was out on the street corner with a sign complaining and protesting against the lockdowns. And then it all started from there. That was my moment where I was like, I have had enough. I can't do this alone. I have to find like-minded individuals. And as a group, we need to change our culture. And it's not just change our culture, but politics is always downstream of that. So you got to change your culture first. You got to find ways to do it. You got to find ways to awaken people. There's been some real signs of hope lately. I've been thrilled with the Oliver Anthony song. I don't know if you're familiar with that. 45 million views in the last 2 weeks, and the guy was a complete unknown 2 weeks ago, or maybe 2.5 weeks ago now. And it's essentially a song about freedom. Now, I don't think the guy's on the right, but he's very much speaking truth about the deep state, about welfare, about child trafficking, all in a song. It's powerful. So I would recommend you find Richmond, north of Richmond, Oliver Anthony.
Okay, yeah, I have heard that. Yeah, I'll have to listen to it again, though. Yeah.
Well, we're down to about a minute. Can you give information about how to get a hold of you one more time?
Yeah, CaliforniaParentsUnion.com. And you had asked earlier, Eric, about events. CaliforniaParentsUnited.org has an events page, and we do our best to put all the events up there. So I'm going to take on the task to put up the Tulare and Fresno events so that people have more information. So CaliforniaParentsUnion.com to join, and then CaliforniaParentsUnited.org for our events on that call to action page, events page. So I appreciate the opportunity, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's only $25, folks. It's time to get involved. You know, what is that at Starbucks? That's 3 fancy coffees, maybe 3.5.
Right?
You could make a difference.
Are they that expensive now? $8 a cup of coffee? Jeez.
For the real fancy stuff in the large size, yeah, they're insane. Well, I thank you for sharing this time with me. we're going to go ahead and go to break. And I know you've got to get to an event, and I will finish the last part of the show. So I thank you for this time.
Thanks, Eric.
Let's go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to all of my listeners that, if you listen at all, thank you. But I would really appreciate it. It would really make a difference if you could comment, like, subscribe, share. All of those make a difference in getting this message out. And I believe that the guest I had on today, she's powerful. We need more people like that. So please join her or find your place. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. We are a growing station. We are also on 102.3 FM, and we're on several spots in social media. So you can find us on Rumble. A lot of our shows are on Rumble. You can find us on Truth Social. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Anyway, however you find us, I believe that we have a consistent conservative message here, that we're kind of the Wild West of free speech, especially on the radio, because there's, the boss isn't breathing down my neck telling me what to say, though he might have something to say if I went all rhino, and then, he'd have to put on his hunting gear. But otherwise, really Wild West of free speech. So I feel lucky to be here at this station. I wanted to kind of dip into what happened at the debate about a week ago. Now, obviously, the big winner, by far, was Trump, and he was the one that wasn't in the debate. I'm going to focus for a minute a little bit on the other people in the debate. Kind of they don't matter. Asa, I'm okay with transing your kids. Hutchinson, he actually said some good things on abortion, but I can't take him seriously because Asa Hutchinson is completely okay with parents transing their kids. So, I see it as he's done. Doug Burgum, governor of North Dakota, he had some good things to say, but he's an establishment candidate, and he doesn't say it with much passion. There's no pizzazz. I think he's done. Absolute losers in this. Mike Pence proved that he was a deep stater. Yes, he can debate. Once in a while he has a point, but I have zero trust. Like, for instance, did you watch, or were you watching when he said he would eliminate the Office of Education? His body language said, I'm not doing that. He was completely lying. And that lie flowed right out of his lips, no problem. I don't think that Mike Pence deserves enough responsibility to ever be something as big as dog catcher. He needs to go. So hopefully he's out. Chris Christie actually pretended like he was an adult. I don't believe it because I've watched him. The vast majority of the time, Chris Christie comes across as brash as Trump, yet he doesn't ever seem to show a good side. So it's like you get all the negative of Trump and none of the good side. He's a loudmouth jerk. I hope he's done. He also got the greatest booze of the evening. I thought it was appropriate. Unfortunately, Tim Scott, who I, in a lot of ways, like, and I do believe at least he's a good man, though I believe he's much more connected to government than I would like. He really didn't make any real blip. He was kind of a non-factor. It wasn't what he said was bad. It was that it didn't change anything. There was nothing exciting. It's just okay. Then we had a couple that did reasonably well. They had moments. Nikki Haley had a moment when she talked about abortion. Thought she did pretty well with that answer. She had a good moment when she talked about wanting to cut the deficit and blamed Republicans. Yeah, Republicans deserve some of that blame. That's fair. But then we got into Ukraine and suddenly, well, we need to send them however much money they need. So at least when she said, we need to watch spending, that was about home. But as soon as it became international policy, she believed, much like Vivek said to her, well, you're interviewing for a position on, I think he said Raytheon, and I can't remember the other one. But essentially, I believe that she is a neocon, meaning she's totally willing to fund an endless, never ending war because we need to be the policemen of the world. So, is she the worst on this list? No, but I couldn't vote for her. We get to Ron DeSantis, and he had some good moments. I thought he was runner up. He wasn't terrible. I like what he's done as governor, but I'm really, frankly, a little terrified by who is supporting him, who his donors are, because they're deep staters. They're people that they're not on my side. They're not on the side of freedom. I see Ron DeSantis as a good manager, generally a pretty good man, but not likable. I don't hate him, but he didn't even have the good sense to smile when they first introduced him. He looked angry through a lot of the debate. Didn't work real well for me. Now, again, I don't hate Ron DeSantis, and I wish him the best of luck, and I hope that he goes back and continues to be a great governor of Florida. I want somebody that's more like a revolutionary, because we're at a place where we need change. Our rule of law is clearly not being applied evenly. And I'm sure Trump just jumped into your head without even saying his name. I thought that it was also a problem that when hands went up, would you still support the nominee? Ron DeSantis got his hand up, but he looked to his left, and Ramaswamy was decisive. DeSantis waited long enough that it was like 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Then he sort of got his hand up. If he's not the nominee, we need a president that's decisive and that can change what's going on. Well, the only two that I see that can make that difference are Ramaswamy. Now, is he right on everything? No. Is he a perfect man? No. Is he an eloquent speaker for the cause of conservatism? Does he absolutely battle against the woke in an intellectual way? Is he likable? Does he go to places that are traditionally ignored by conservative candidates? You betcha he does. I got to really hand it to him. I hope that he is Trump's vice president because I love a lot of things about Ramaswamy. And I think that he brings a likability and eloquence to how he says things that Trump doesn't necessarily have. He is engendered a loyalty, and I think he deserves that loyalty. But Trump has also blown it on some things. He kind of has a big ego, he kind of has a big mouth, but he's been dead on policy, so I'll take it. I'll take it and go, wow, Trump's not perfect. Okay, yeah, he's not perfect. Is he the best on the field to potentially change the trajectory of our country, to essentially rein in the fourth branch of government? And by the way, the founders did not create a fourth branch of government. It's because we've ignored the Constitution and kept adding whole departments that are essentially run by the executive, by the president, that are not constitutional, like education, Department of Education. Well, I think it needs to go. I absolutely stand with Ramaswamy on that. FBI needs to be, at the very least, severely pared back. Well, we're in a momentous time, a time where you can sit on the sidelines and see what happens, but to not act is to act. To not speak is the same as speaking, because you allow then the loudest voice in the room to dictate the narrative. We need to find our voice. We need to become the leaders that our country is waiting for. And even if you don't want to be the top level leader, what could you do to make a difference? Could you support somebody? Could you do something as simple as talking to your family about faith, talking to your family about morality, talking to your family about politics? There's a country to save. I hope you join me. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX